Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be looking at Google Forms, what Google Forms is, and how you can go about using Google Forms effectively. A quick tutorial, short tutorial, be sure to like and subscribe. Now, let's say you're stuck in the middle of a pandemic, right? And you need to reach a number of people quickly, right? Now, you could call, you could text, you could start a group chat, but essentially these things can be invasive. At times persons don't want to be receiving group messages. One of the affordances of using the Google Suite and Google Drive in general is that you have the option of creating a Google form. When you go to your Google Drive, or when you sign into your Gmails, you'll notice that there is a grid here on the top right, right beside your picture or your profile. If you click on that, it will allow you to go to Drive, click on Drive, and that will take you to this virtual drive space. I do have a video explaining what Google Drive is and how it can be used, so be sure to check that out as well. Um, Now, once you're inside Google Drive, you could do different things like create documents or sheets or a presentation. But for our purposes right now, we're going to create a Google form. Now, Google also has the ability to create a quiz, a test. So they do that for you here. You could do that from a blank form as well, but if you do a blank quiz, then they will fill in all the attributes for you. So you don't have to go in, set in different things like, telling the form that, this should be a score here, and so forth and so on. Or you could use a template. We're going to start with a blank form here so we can essentially see how it works. And um, this essentially is one of the more recent versions of Google Forms. We're now in May 2022, and this is the one of the more recent versions of Google Forms. It has evolved since they came out with Google Forms. But once you click on Google Form, I'm going to hit no thanks. Once you click on Google Form, it gives you this space here that might be a little bit unfamiliar if you are accustomed to using Word or maybe even a spreadsheet program. This is a little bit different, right? And the reason for that is essentially what you're doing is simply creating questions for some audience. So my earlier example, you're in the middle of a pandemic. Let's say you own a restaurant and you want to know how, if sending regular meals to homes would be more preferable for your clients, your regular clients, than them having to come in during the pandemic, right? So you could create a form to do that. So where it says untitled form, I'm going to click on here and I'm going to say, I'm going to give my form a title. I'm going to just call this restaurant form. And you'll notice that once you're done with that, here, this untitled form section takes the actual title. So you could have done it from here as well. All right. And sometimes, when you're sending out forms to persons who might not even be aware that a form was on its way to them, um, people don't like filling out forms, right? And so giving your form a description might help the endeavor to have them fill out that form, especially if they know it's coming from you, right? So you'd put a description in there, put the name of your restaurant, name of your company, your name. Please help us serve you better. If this is a personal form, hey, it's me, your friend from so and so. You could put that in the description section here. And then the scrolling down in this space gives you the option of creating the very first question. All right. So your first question might be something, it doesn't even have to be a question. It might just be an option telling them what they should do. It might be something like name, for example. And Google has one of the good things about this company. This is the reason why I talk about this company so much, is they think about the user. They think about what should happen and they think about active solutions, right? And so they have essentially written the algorithm where once you put the type of question in here, they then give you an accurate suggestion of the type of response that you should get, right? So when you put name here, Google says, okay, then this probably should be a short answer type response. And so the short answer text here is where your user would respond. Now, bear in mind, we're in the editing mode at the moment. Not This is not the view that the user will see, right? You're seeing the raw format at the moment if you're following along with me. And so you're simply seeing what will happen when you essentially send this to the user. Here is a short answer text. And then you could do things like you could make this a required question if it is highly important. I do not suggest, making all your questions required because, like I said, persons don't like filling out forms. And so you want to make your forms as short as possible, as to the point as possible, and just asking those most important questions. And then the questions that absolutely should not be ignored, you could make those required. All right. So maybe name would be one. When you're ready to create a new question, you would simply hit the add question here. You would do another question like, would you like us to send you your favorite meals weekly, right? And of course, the machine learning that Google has implemented in its products is analyzing the question and giving me suggestions as to what the response types should be, right? And so this is essentially a yes, no, or maybe response type. So I could simply hit add all here, and Google will essentially add those responses, right? Notice I can't click on them because I'm in editing mode. Editing mode simply allows me to edit the information here in some way, right? When I'll show you what it will look like on the user side in a second. Now I do like to add other sometimes because you never know. As people we are weird, and sometimes we have responses that you and I would not think about. So I do like to add the other in there, and that other gives them the option of essentially um, putting some crazy, you know, far off response in there that we wouldn't have thought about. You'll also notice that for each question you have an image icon here. So you could add an image, you could search for an image. It really depends on your question, but you could add an image beside each response type to maybe give the user a clue as to how they should be responding or what the response type represents. If I had, let's say, if we created a question, for example, that said, choose your favorite meals, you know, Google change this to check boxes so that they could choose more than one. So we could say, um, let's say vegan is one. I'm gonna hit enter. Vegetarian is another. Pasta is another, and let's say chicken is the last one. All right. So from here, I could simply hit the vegan option, and if I have pictures on my computer, I could use the pictures on there. If I have pictures somewhere on the web, I could use a URL. I could use my Google Photos. I could get it from my Google Drive, or I could do an image search. So I'm gonna do vegan for this one. And I'll just choose. Actually, this one um, might be good, and I'll hit insert, and it will insert a vegan option here, right? And I'll do the same thing. I'm not gonna do the others, but but it will essentially do the same thing for the others accordingly. And then when you're done, you could create another. Now I'm gonna show you specific question types that might also be useful. Let's say you wanted a rating scale if you're doing a business. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate? And fine, and Google automatically includes a rating scale here, and of course number one would probably be the worst, so you could change your label here to um, terrible, and label 10, the best in the world. For example, it gives you that linear scale, right? That's one type of response. Another type of response, and you don't have to choose the response types that Google gives you, because here, this drop down option will allow you to choose the actual response type, right? So you have, if you wanted them to give you an entire paragraph for a response. You could have that if you wanted a multiple choice where they could only choose one answer. That's there. You could do check boxes, drop down. The drop down works really well when you have specific people filling out your form, and if you have the names of those persons here, then and they could simply just hit the drop down and choose their names, then that works well. It could be a file upload. You might want them to upload a file, maybe a resume, then that works as well, right? The linear scale is the one we just used. You could do a multiple choice grid, or even a checkbox grid where you have corresponding items at the top and to the side. You could have the date and time, when was the last time you were in the store, and so forth and so on. One thing I want to essentially show is how you can verify that the information you're getting is correct. So let's say that you wanted them, or at least have the form attempt to verify. Let's say you wanted them to enter their emails, right? You could make this a required question. Could make this a required question here, and you could choose data validation. From the data validation section, you could choose a response validation. If you click on that, then you can have the form check to make sure that it validates the information before the person moves on, right? So we're expecting, let's say, text. For example, if it is an email and you're expecting text to contain, you could do contains, you're expecting text, the email to contain this. Or Google has done us one better by just including email here. And right beside it is the customer error text. So you could say something like the customer error text is the error that they'll see if they're not entering a valid email. Please enter a valid email. All right, and you could make this anything you want to do. You want to make it, if it's a personal form, you could, make it really funny. Your responses could be really, really funny here. I've seen, many students do that, for example. It's up to you how you go about doing the validation. But note that it does not have to be text. If you're expecting them to return a number, you could then validate that number using specific criteria as well. If you're expecting them to, you know, be returning a specific length, or a regular expression, then you could do that as well. So you're afforded different means to do that. Once you're done with your form, and you'll note that the form itself is saving automatically, right? So you don't have to worry about saving the form each time you use it. But this is essentially how you would go about creating a Google form. Then the other options that are here, will allow you to add things like a video, will allow you to add an image, or create a separate section, which we will go over in another tutorial since we're just starting out. But once you're done with your form, if you want to see what the form looks like, then you could hit on your preview option here. I'm going to hit OK. And here is a preview of how or what your form will look like to your user. Notice that we had said name is mandatory. They have to put this in there. And so you see that red asterisk. So you'd put the person would have to put a name in there. If they chose other for this question, they could enter whatever that other is. Here is the choose your favorite meal. Of course, the pictures being shown for all of them would make this look really, really nice and professional. But we only have one picture, for the sake of this of this tutorial, but you can see how each picture would be squared nicely on your screen, which is quite nice, right? Here is our scale. So the user would choose the scale that he or she wants and then enter an email. And of course, if they did not enter an email and they tried to submit, it should not submit. I don't okay, we had cleared the validation, I just remembered. So we didn't put the validation in there for email. But if we had done that, let's do that really quickly. So let's make it email. uh, let's make it email, um, and let's just say wrong here. All right, and I'm gonna go back up and I'm gonna try this one more time. So if we do this, now notice that the error is here. It says wrong, and it is exactly like we had done here. All right. So you're able to create this form and have this form look exactly how you want it to look. Now, when you're ready to send the form, before you send the form, actually, what I would do is I would customize it so that it is, according to some color scheme, maybe a color scheme that is um, related to the company's colors, or a color scheme related to the type of information in your form. You could choose an image in there as a header as well. This is a restaurant, so maybe food and dining. Some of them are animated as well, and so forth and so on. So you could choose different themes. You could also choose, here's the response that I had submitted before. You'll see a good graph of the responses. But you could also choose a number of different settings. If you were making a quiz, you could make this a quiz from here. You could choose how the responses are collected, and then what happens after it is sent, right? And so forth and so on. But it's quite a robust tool that essentially allows you to create forms, create surveys, create quizzes, and send those to persons accordingly. I'm going to hit preview once more to see what the new form looks like. Let me close the older ones. And of course, here is my very cool form that I just created. And I can go ahead once I'm here. And by the way, you'll notice this edit button because I am signed in. It's my form, and so I can edit. But once I'm here and I'm ready to send this form to my audience, I'm going to hit send. And I could choose to send this via email if I have a listserv, if I have a number of people. I could choose to do a link here from the middle. I like to shorten the URL. I could copy this and then I could paste it on my social media, Facebook. Or if I have a website, I could choose the embedded code and I could copy and paste the embedded code accordingly. All right. This is Google Forms. This is how you'd go about using Google Forms. It's much more robust than what I just did, in the past few minutes, given the time we had. So if you do decide to use Google Forms, be sure to check out all the features because you can do a lot more with Google Forms. If you're just starting out, then this will be useful to you. All right. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.